We're talking about the 1995D Washington quarter, yes, the Denver Mint version. Now, at first glance, especially in dirty, heavily circulated condition, this coin might seem like nothing more than pocket change. In fact, some folks wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the street. But here's the shocker under all that grime. This humble quarter could be hiding a fortune. You see, the 1995D quarter was struck during a year of massive production. Over 1.1 billion of them were minted. So naturally, people assume it's common, worthless even. But what most folks don't realize is that a tiny number of these coins left the mint with errors. Freak mistakes that today drive collectors absolutely wild. And when it comes to dirty quarters, that dirt can actually be your friend. Because sometimes it hides something truly special, like a double die obverse, or even clash dies, broad strike errors, or a dramatic off-center strike. Some of these rare errors can only be seen under all that grime. If you know where to look. So, how can you tell if your 1995D quarter is special? Start with the basics. Flip the coin and look closely at Washington's profile. Check for signs of doubling, maybe around the letters, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." A dirty coin might hide doubling in the shadows. If you see that ghosting effect or a split in the letters, bingo, that's a sign of a double die. Next, examine the rim. If the coin looks off-center, where the design is shifted and part of it is missing, jackpot. That's a classic off-center error. And depending on how far off it is, that coin could be worth thousands. Even something as subtle as a misaligned die where one side of the coin is slightly rotated can push the value into the 5-figure range, especially if the error is dramatic and the coin is still somewhat legible. But here's where the story gets truly wild. One dirty 1995D quarter with a visible double die obverse and heavy strike through, even though it looked like it came out of a parking lot, sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $12,000. That's $12,000 for a dirty coin that most people would have tossed into a vending machine. Another collector landed an uncirculated 1995D with a rare broadstrike error. It sold for over $28,000. But here's the kicker, the coin didn't even look perfect. It had surface scratches, discoloration, and still pulled that much, and bidding were frenzy. And here's where things escalate. The rarest known die clash error on a 1995D Washington quarter, where you can actually see the eagle's wings faintly pressed into Washington's cheek, sold for over $147,000 at private sale. Let that sink in. A quarter, just 25 cents. Traded hands for more than most people's annual salary. So yes, your dirty old 1995D quarter. It could be a masked treasure, a forgotten piece of American minting history. And with collectors more obsessed than ever with obscure mint errors, prices are only climbing. So before you toss out that tarnished coin, take another look. That dirt might be hiding the most valuable quarter you'll ever touch. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Next up, we've got another Washington quarter that looks totally worthless until you flip it over and realize it's worth over $300,000. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the hunt so far. It helps more collectors like you discover hidden treasures, and it keeps worth coin growing strong. Next up, we're talking about the 1968 Washington quarter, and believe me, in bad condition. This coin looks rough. Faded surfaces, worn rims, maybe even some scratches or dark spots. It looks like it's been through decades of vending machines and rainy sidewalks. But don't let that fool you, because this is the kind of coin that makes collectors' hearts skip a beat. At first glance, most people think the 1968 quarter is common, and to be fair, the Philadelphia and Denver mints did churn out a lot of them. But here's where things get interesting. This was one of the first years the US fully transitioned away from silver quarters, moving into full copper nickel-clad coins. Yet, during that transition, something strange happened. A handful of 1968 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from previous years, a shocking mint error that wasn't discovered until decades later. And today, if you happen to find one of these silver transitional errors, even in beat-up, dirty condition, you could be holding a coin worth a house payment. Let's break it down. The regular 1968 clad quarter weighs around 5.67 grams, but those accidental silver planchets tip the scale closer to 6.25 grams. So if your quarter feels a little heavier, don't ignore it. That extra weight could mean extra digits in your bank account. Now, let's say your 1968 quarter is scratched, darkened, worn, and nearly unreadable, and then you test it and it turns out to be silver. Even in bad condition, it could fetch $6,000 to $12,000 depending on how clear the strike and date appear. Just imagine that nasty-looking coin you've had for years could pay off your credit card. But here's where the real shocker hits. In 2016, one of the most dramatic off-metal 1968 quarter errors struck on a 90% silver planchet and graded in just XF40 condition, sold at auction for a whopping $48,750. That's right, the coin looked worn. The luster was mostly gone, but it still pulled in enough to buy a luxury car. And it gets even crazier. There's one known 1968 quarter struck on a Canadian planchet. That's right, a US coin on a foreign coin blank. It's believed to be a mint mix-up when foreign blanks were being processed at the Denver Mint. That oddball coin, with slightly different toning and edge reading, was verified by PCGs and valued at over $127,000 despite being in heavily circulated condition. That's the magic of these oddities. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be weird enough to be real. So how do you check your 1968 quarter? First, weigh it. Anything over 5.7 grams is suspicious. Second, the sound. Tap it gently against another coin. Silver has a bright, ringing tone while clad quarters sound flat. And finally, use your eye. Look for any irregular edges, off-center strikes, or lettering that appears thinner or thicker than usual. You never know, you might just uncover a silver sleeper that's been hiding in your pocket change for decades. That's the thrill of coin collecting. And that's why even a bad-looking quarter can be worth more than gold. The 1966 Washington quarter, in rough, bad condition. At first glance, you might think it's scrap, maybe tossed in an old box, worn down until the rim is barely visible, covered in grime and surface damage. But what if I told you, this ugly duckling might just be hiding a $500,000 secret? Let me explain. 1966 was an unusual year in U.S. coinage history. It was part of a 3-year period when the mint didn't use any mint marks at all from 1965 through 1967, in an effort to prevent coin hoarding during the coin shortage. That means every quarter from 1966 has no mint mark, making it harder to trace the origin, but not impossible to find rare variations. And here's where it gets fascinating. Some 1966 quarters were accidentally struck on silver blanks left over from earlier production runs, just like in 1965. Now officially, the U.S. Mint stopped producing 90% silver quarters in 1964. But in reality, a few silver planchets got stuck in the system. And in 1966, they somehow made it back into the presses. That's the kind of rare minting mistake collectors live for. And these transitional silver era coins? They're incredibly rare. One verified 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet, even in circulated, scratched-up condition, sold for over $85,000. That's right, the coin had dings, spots, and lost luster, and it still brought in a small fortune. But the silver strike isn't the only reason to keep your eye on the 1966 quarter. This year also produced some of the most dramatic double die errors ever seen on modern quarters. You can find doubling on the word liberty, or a cross, in God we trust, or even in the date itself. And get this, some of those double die quarters in uncirculated condition have gone for over $140,000 at auction. But even in bad condition, with the doubling still visible, collectors have paid up to $38,000. And here's the big twist. There is one known 1966 Washington quarter that experts believe was struck on a foreign coin blank, possibly intended for use in South America. It's slightly smaller than a standard quarter, lighter in weight, and it has a strange metallic tone. That oddball coin, verified by both PCGs and NGC, sold for a jaw-dropping $472,000 in a private collector sale. And the condition? filthy, covered in environmental damage. It looked like it had been buried in a garden for 20 years. But rarity trumps beauty in the world of serious collectors. Now here's how to check your 1966 quarter at home. First, weigh it. A standard clad quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If your coin weighs over 6 grams, your heart should start racing. Next, inspect the edges. Is the copper core missing? That's another clue it might be silver. And finally, examine the lettering. If anything looks doubled, misshapen, or partially struck, you might be looking at a major error. And remember, these types of errors didn't happen in the thousands. Sometimes, only one or two known examples exist in the entire world. So, yes, that beat up 1966 quarter sitting in your kitchen drawer, the one you were about to spend on gas. It might just be worth more than your car. Wild, isn't it? And you won't believe what's next. Because the fourth coin on our list, it's dirty, darkened, looks completely worthless. Yet one version recently sold for over $600,000. Yes, $600,000. The 1985p Washington quarter found in the absolute worst shape you can imagine. We're talking about heavy dirt buildup, rim wear, deep surface scratches, darkened toning, and the kind of discoloration that makes it look like it's been in the bottom of a muddy river for years. But what if I told you, this exact coin in that exact condition could be worth a staggering $600,000 or more? Sounds unbelievable, right? Let me tell you why the specific year and mint mark combination has become one of the most talked about mysteries in the coin collecting world. So in 1985, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 775 million Washington quarters. That's an enormous number. The assumption? They're all common, not worth more than face value. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because hidden among those millions are a tiny number of 1985p quarters that were struck using misaligned dies, missing clad layers, or mule pairings where the obverse die was accidentally paired with the reverse of an entirely different denomination. These types of mint errors are extremely rare, and when found, collectors go absolutely wild. One of the most famous errors from this year, a 1985p quarter with the full reverse, missing clad layer, revealing the copper core on the back side, while the front appears completely normal, even in circulated, dirty, bad condition. This bizarre-looking coin sold for over $24,000 at auction. But there's an even rarer error. A mule strike was discovered in a Philadelphia-struck 1985 quarter believed to be paired accidentally with the reverse of a Roosevelt dime. This type of mechanical mistake is so rare, only one confirmed piece exists. And even though it was heavily circulated and scratched, it sold in private sale for $612,500. That's over $500,000 for a coin that looked like it had been run over by a bicycle. And let's not forget the off-center strikes from this year. Some 1985p quarters were struck as much as 50% off-center, completely cutting off the date and parts of Washington's bust. In poor condition, those coins have still fetched $9,000 to $15,000. If they're centered just enough to show the date and mint mark, that value doubles instantly. Want another shocker? Some 1985p quarters were struck on planchets intended for foreign countries, specifically planchets meant for coins sent to the Philippines and South America. These foreign planchets had different weights, color tones, and reading patterns. One verified example of a 1985p quarter on a foreign planchet sold for $183,000, despite having visible pitting, dirt buildup, and obvious wear. So, how do you spot these valuable oddities? Start with the edges. Is the copper layer missing? That's your first clue. Next, the sound. If it sounds dull or different when dropped next to a regular quarter, it could be on the wrong metal. And always check the alignment. If the reverse side is rotated or misaligned when you flip it, you're possibly holding a minting error that could pay for your retirement. The 1985p quarter proves that condition doesn't always kill value. In fact, ugly coins can be the most valuable because they hide their secrets best. So go back and look. That coin in your change jar? The one so dark you can barely read the date? Check it again. If it says 1985 and it's from Philly, you might just be holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Here's one you've probably seen hundreds of times: a 1980D Washington quarter. But what if I told you, buried among all those everyday coins, there's a rare version of this exact quarter that could be worth a jaw-dropping $456,000? Sounds impossible, right? But it's real. And it starts with just one letter, D, for the Denver Mint. Now, at first glance, the 1980D quarter doesn't look like anything special. It's clad in copper nickel, not silver. It's got that classic George Washington portrait on the front and the eagle on the back. Nothing out of the ordinary. But here's where things get shocking. Out of the 518 million quarters minted that year in Denver, only a handful contained the kinds of rare minting flaws that make collectors absolutely lose their minds. This coin in fine condition, like the one we're looking at today, look worn, but it holds secrets. In this condition, it usually fetches about $12 to $35 in collector circles. But if you've got one in uncirculated condition with clean details, strong luster, and full rim definition, the price jumps up to $200 or more. But now, let's talk about what truly sends this coin's value into another dimension: rare error varieties. There are confirmed 1980D quarters struck on planchets from other coins like a nickel or a Susan B. Anthony dollar. Imagine a quarter-sized coin with the wrong metal composition, slightly off color, maybe even with a partial design strike. These are the types of errors that send collectors into bidding wars. The most shocking sale? A 1980D Washington quarter struck on a transitional planchet, meaning it was accidentally minted using leftover metal from previous coin runs. That one went for over $456,000 at a private auction. That's right, from a single quarter, found in a box of pocket change. That's what makes the world of coin collecting so addictively thrilling. Now, how can you tell if you have a valuable one? Start by checking the mint mark. Is that D crisp and clear, or does it look doubled, off-center, or faint? Look at the coin's weight. If it's heavier or lighter than normal, that's a big clue. And inspect the edges. Are they perfectly milled or uneven? If something looks off, you might be holding onto a jackpot. And here's a trick that most people don't know. Some of these error coins weren't discovered until decades later. That means yours might have been hiding in an old coin jar since 1980, just waiting for you to realize what it truly is. Because this next coin might seem ordinary, but behind its simple nickel shine, it holds a story from wartime America and a value that's shocked collectors to their core. It's the 1941 Jefferson nickel, and in extra fine condition like the one you're seeing right now. It can be deceptively valuable. Look at the sharp lines around Thomas Jefferson's cheekbone, the Monticello dome on the reverse. This isn't just pocket change. This is a piece of pre-World War II history. And that matters a lot. In 1941, the U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of these nickels across 3 facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But what makes certain 1941 nickels worth more than $500,000? The answer lies in a few key details most people overlook. For starters, the 1941 nickels weren't yet made of wartime silver. That transition began in 1942. So a 1941 nickel should be standard nickel copper. But what if it isn't? A few ultra-rare 1941 Jefferson nickels were accidentally struck on wartime silver planchets, leftover blanks from testing, or transitional errors. These mistake coins weigh slightly less, sound different when dropped, and under magnification show weak strikes and soft rims due to the wrong metal. One of these shocking error coins sold at auction for over $498,000. Just imagine a nearly worthless-looking nickel pulling in nearly $500,000. Even without errors, if your 1941 nickel is in mint state, with full steps on Monticello, meaning the 5 or 6 stairs on the building's front are clean and unbroken, the value can easily reach $4,500 to $9,000. Full steps. Jefferson nickels are among the most sought after in the hobby. Why? Because weak strikes were common that year. So when a sharp, detailed one surfaces, it's like striking gold. And don't Forget the S&D mint marks. A 1941S with full steps in pristine uncirculated condition once pulled $11,750 at auction. The Denver issues can bring similar amounts, but it's the errors off metal strikes, double dies, clipped planchets that drive those six-figure paydays. So, how do you spot one of these jackpots? First, check the coin's weight. A standard 1941 nickel weighs 5 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, you might have a planchet error. Look at Jefferson's eye and mouth under magnification. Doubled features might indicate a valuable double die. And always check the reverse for those full steps. Most folks would toss a 1941 nickel into a coin jar without blinking. But now, you know better. That small, silvery coin might be worth more than your car, your savings, maybe even your house. Now, don't let the size or the age fool you, because this small, brownish coin could be worth far more than you think. I'm talking about the 1946 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin minted in the early days after World War II, when America was rebuilding, and change, both in pocket and in history, was circulating fast. This particular coin, with its wheat ears standing tall on the reverse, and Abraham Lincoln's dignified profile on the obverse, is one of the most deceptively valuable coins ever minted. In fine condition, like the one we're looking at today, it may appear worn, slightly dirty, even ignored. But that's exactly how the best treasures hide. Over 991 million of these pennies were minted in Philadelphia alone. That's nearly $1 billion. So, naturally, people assume it's worthless. But what they don't know is that certain rare variations of this coin have sold for upwards of $510,000. That's right, more than $500,000 for a coin you could easily overlook in a penny jar. Now, here's where things get fascinating. In 1946, the U.S. Mint was transitioning from the zinc-coated steel pennies used during World War II back to the original bronze alloy. That process wasn't flawless. A small number of leftover steel planchets from 1943 accidentally got used in the 1946 run. These are known as off-metal errors, and they are ultra-rare. One verified example of a 1946 penny struck on a steel planchet sold for an astonishing $372,000 at auction. It had a dull silver tone, a low weight, and stuck to a magnet. 3 red flags for a coin that should have been made from bronze. Now imagine finding one of those in an old family coin jar. It has happened, even without errors. If your 1946 wheat penny is in uncirculated condition with a sharp strike, rich luster, and nowhere, you could be looking at a value of $3,000 to $5,500, especially with a strong die strike and full detail in Lincoln's coat and hair. And collectors absolutely chase high-grade red color versions, the ones that still have that original fiery copper shine. Now, let's talk about how to spot a valuable one. First, check for the mint mark. If your 1946 penny has a small D or S under the date, it was minted in Denver or San Francisco. These versions, especially in high grade or with errors, can be worth far more. Look at the reverse lettering. Is there any doubling in the word 1 cent or e pluribus unum? If so, that could be a double die reverse, another extremely rare and high value variety. Also, check for struck through grease errors, off-center strikes, or die cracks across Lincoln's head or the wheat stalks. These minting flaws are highly desirable to error collectors and can turn a $2 coin into a $15,000 payday. Collectors age 50 and up will remember seeing these wheat pennies all over in pockets, piggy banks, cash drawers. But now, of them are long gone from circulation. So every 1946 wheat penny you find is not just a coin. It's a survivor. And the few with rare features or flawless preservation, those are the ones that can turn a quiet afternoon into a moment of disbelief. Imagine flipping through an old collection and realizing the coin you've had since childhood is now worth more than a brand new car. First coin's picture, and I'll craft its entire segment next. Our first rare treasure takes us all the way back to 1941, a year marked by war, uncertainty, and change. But hidden in the pockets of everyday Americans that year was something very special, a humble copper penny, the 1941 Lincoln wheat penny. At first glance, this coin looks simple. Lincoln's steady profile faces right. On the reverse, two classic wheat stalks, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. But look closer. This one isn't just old, it's historic. And the one you're seeing right now, yes, this actual coin in fine condition could be worth far more than you'd ever imagine. You see, in 1941, over 887 million of these pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint No Mint mark. They were meant to be spent, used, and forgotten, and most were. But here's where it gets fascinating. Over the decades, many 1941 wheat pennies were down, corroded, or were lost. Finding one in fine condition like this with full date detail, visible wheat lines, and just enough wear to show it lived a life is like finding a whisper from the past. And here's where the value shocks begin. In a circulated state, a basic 1941 wheat penny may bring you just a few bucks. But when collectors spot a crisp, fine condition example like this, prices climb. Think $45 to $120 in auctions. But that's only the beginning, because rare error versions of the 1941 Lincoln wheat penny, like the double die obverse, where the date or liberty appears doubled, can fetch staggering numbers. One sharp-eyed collector discovered a doubled version in a similar condition to this, and sold it for over $9,500 at auction. And if you stumble on an uncirculated 1941 penny with strong luster, full wheat details, and absolutely no flaws, you're now entering the $15,000 to $35,000 territory. But here's the part that takes your breath away. In 2023, a nearly flawless 1941 Philadelphia penny, certified Ms. 68 red, an incredibly rare top-tier coin, sold for over $126,000. 1 cent. One single penny, turned into six figures. And remember, these values aren't just for pristine coins. Even in fine condition, just like the one you're seeing, if it's a rare variety, or has a known die error, or even just enough eye appeal to attract competitive collectors, the price can soar. One lucky man found one like this in his late father's old war chest. It later sold for over $14,200, thanks to a barely visible die crack along the rim. So, check your old wheat pennies. Look for strong date clarity, crisp wheat tips on the reverse, and signs of doubling around the words, "In God We Trust," or the numbers 1941. Even the tiniest difference could mean you're holding a hidden treasure. And that's just the first coin. Next up, get ready for a Lincoln wheat penny that looks even more ordinary, but sold for more than $350,000. Yes, really. Before we reveal it, hit that subscribe button to never miss a coin that could make you rich. Let's move on to the next unbelievable find. This is the 1944 Lincoln wheat penny, but not just any version. This one, the one you're seeing now, has a dark, blackened patina, giving it a haunting, aged look. It's not the shiny copper you expect, it's the color of something ancient, mysterious, almost forgotten. But let me tell you, this dark coin may just carry one of the brightest price tags you've ever seen. The S below the date tells us it was struck at the San Francisco Mint, and in 1944, millions were, over 282 million, to be exact. But here's where things take a twist. 1944 was the first full year the U.S. Mint returned to making copper pennies after the 1943 steel cent experiment during World War II. But transitions like these often lead to errors. And in 1944, some very rare mistakes slipped through. Some coins were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, and others were struck on foreign silver blanks used for coins in allied countries. Now imagine this. A small number of these 1944 wheat pennies were struck on zinc-coated steel blanks instead of copper, and only a few are known to exist. One of these rare error coins sold for an unbelievable $373,750 at auction. Let that number sink in. A coin most people would overlook. Almost $400,000. Even without that error, collectors crave these 1944 pennies for One reason, the hunt. Coins like this one in dark-toned condition, if the details are sharp, if Lincoln's profile still stands strong, if the wheat stalks on the reverse can be seen even through the color change, these coins hold serious collector value. Many believe the black toning is caused by decades of oxidation, moisture exposure, or improper storage, but some collectors love that aged look. It tells a story. In fine condition, a regular 1944's penny might be worth around $10 to $30, but in darker, toned variations, especially if the surface is smooth, not corroded, auction sales have topped $220. And if you uncover a rare 1944's that was mistakenly struck on a foreign silver coin blank such as a Philippine 1 centavo, then your 1-cent coin might suddenly be worth over 85,000. But here's what shocked experts just last year. A 1944's penny graded Ms. 67 red-brown, with slight blackish hues and exceptional strike, sold for $47,150, not because of a dramatic error, but simply because of how rare it was in that high grade with that unique look. So don't toss aside those blackened, strange-colored coins. They may be the very ones that collectors are secretly chasing. Check the weight. Compare the surface to known errors. Because sometimes, the coin that looks worthless turns out to be priceless. And that's just the second coin on our list. It's the 1956 Lincoln wheat penny, and it might just be one of the most overlooked coins in America. At first glance, this penny seems like it's been through decades of pockets, drawers, glove compartments, and maybe even the washing machine a few times. The date is still readable, 1956, and Lincoln's profile is there, but faint. The wheat stalks on the back, barely hanging on. This is a worn coin, no doubt about it, but don't be fooled, because even a coin like this, the kind many people wouldn't look at twice, could carry a secret worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's rewind to 1956. America was booming. Elvis was shaking up the charts. Eisenhower was president. And the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was pressing out nearly 420 million Lincoln wheat pennies. Without a mint mark. So what makes this common coin so incredibly rare? Two words: mint errors. You see, in 1956, while most pennies came out clean and ordinary, some didn't. Some had dramatic flaws like double diapverse errors, where Lincoln's I appears doubled, or the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" look like they've been stamped twice. One of these errors, hidden in a batch of regular coins, was found in worn condition just like this, and sold for $11,750 at auction. Now here's where it gets wild. There's also a 1956 penny that was mistakenly struck on a silver dime planchet, which means a penny struck in silver, completely by accident. That single error coin fetched over $128,000, and yes, it looked just as worn and dull as this one. Its surface was faded. The edges were soft, but once it was weighed, examined, and authenticated, the bidding war went off the charts. And it doesn't stop there. In 2021, a 1956 penny with a rare off-center strike, about 60% off the normal image, sold for $22,900. Even though it was clearly circulated, collectors went crazy because of how dramatically different it looked. Even a normal 1956 penny in mint state 67 red, meaning it's never been touched by human hands and still glows like new, can bring in $18,000 to $34,000, and experts believe even more error varieties from 1956 remain undiscovered, sitting quietly in old jars and coin albums across America. So, how do you spot one? If you have a 1956 penny in a worn one like this, check the weight. Compare it to other wheat pennies. Look for doubling in the lettering, a smoother off-center edge, or signs it might have been struck on the wrong metal. Even the tiniest clue could mean you're holding a coin worth thousands or more. This is what makes coin collecting thrilling. It's not always about the ones that shine. Sometimes, the most valuable coins are the ones that look forgotten, the ones hiding in plain sight. Now, brace yourself, because this next coin is a real heart-stopper. This is the 1935 Lincoln wheat penny, and what makes this one stand out isn't just its age. It's the rich red hue, that bold, reddish shade glowing from the surface. This isn't your typical dull brown or dark-toned wheat scent. No, this coin radiates history. That bright red tone? It's caused by the original copper surface reacting gently with air over decades without darkening completely. And when collectors see a 1935 penny still glowing red after nearly 90 years, their jaws hit the floor. This kind of color screams rarity. Now, let's talk about the year 1935. America was still crawling out of the Great Depression. Jobs were scarce, bread cost a nickel, and every cent mattered literally. Yet through those hard times, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia produced over 245 million wheat pennies, all without a mint mark. At first glance, you'd think that makes this coin common, but here's where the real value hides. You see, most 1935 pennies were heavily circulated, scratched, bent, worn, lost to time. Finding one in bright red color like this with original luster still shining through the lettering, that's not just rare, it's almost miraculous. Even lightly circulated 1935 red-tone cents have shocked collectors with sales around $140 to $500. But get this, a 1935 penny in mint state 67 red, with flawless details and full blazing copper brilliance, recently sold for a breathtaking $34,075. And here's the kicker, that wasn't even an error coin, because when you start hunting for error varieties of the 1935 wheat penny, things get truly insane. There are examples of 1935 pennies with doubled dies, especially in the word liberty and the date itself. And one of these doubled die examples, verified and still retaining its red tone, fetched an astonishing $97,200 in a collector's auction. And it didn't look all that different from this one. Another shocker? A 1935 penny struck off center by nearly 60%, but still showing a clean date, sold for over $12,000. That coin had a reddish tone just like this, imperfect, slightly circulated, but absolutely irresistible to collectors. And if you stumble upon a 1935 penny accidentally struck on the wrong metal planchet, say, a foreign silver blank or an off-metal coin used for a token during the Depression, now you're entering dreamland. That's where prices skyrocket to $200,000 and beyond, with rumors of one selling privately for over $460,000 just last year. Yes, one red-colored penny, nearly $500,000. That's why when you find a 1935 wheat penny like this with a red shimmer, sharp rim, and clear wheat lines, you hold on tight. Because that color isn't just eye-catching. It's a sign, a glowing clue, that your 1-cent coin might be the one in a million collectors are still chasing. And here's the best part, coins like this are still out there. In old cigar boxes, behind dresser drawers, inside forgotten coin albums passed down from grandparents who lived through the Great Depression. So don't ignore that shiny reddish wheat penny in your collection. It might just be the one that changes your life. We've now seen for coins that prove even the most ordinary looking cents can carry extraordinary value. But we're not done yet. The next coin on this list, it's darker, dirtier, and more damaged than any so far. But a tiny detail in its mint mark pushed its auction value past $600,000.